fun. We love what we do. We're passionate. We're supportive of each other.
Oh, no, I looked in my pocket and saw I have the water
I
bill.
know.
So big on like self-care.
He's old and grumpy.
I drive by here and I go,
Colleagues, she's a bodybuilder.
Showed them my
And
that I had it paid. I look at it.
she was up here at the Turpin campus today.
Okay, we're all set? All right. Well, let's get started. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Adjustment meeting for February 28, 2018. Let's start with our roll call, please.
Chairman Elliott,
Here.
Mr. Obowski,
here.
Mr. Burris,
Here.
Mr. Eisner,
Here.
Ms. Turner.
Present.
Okay, thank you. Let me start with a couple of preliminary announcements. First, let's silence our cell phones. When you come up to the podium, please state your name and address. If you would, please do not speak from the audience. We are authorized, in the case of an emergency, to deviate from the agenda and to accommodate people. And there has been one request to move number 7 up, the 489 Riverside Drive dock variance. Is there anybody here? I think we can take the first one anyway, Dr. Morazzo. That's pretty quick. Anybody here from Habitat for Humanity? Sir, would you mind if we waited and take yours at the end? Is that okay? Or are you in a rush to leave? That's okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And from Seabreeze Drive, anybody here from Seabreeze Drive? Would you mind waiting till the end of the meeting also? No problem? You don't have to catch a flight or have any sick children at home? Okay. All right, so then let's take Dr. Morazzo first after our quasi-judicial announcement and the swearing of the speakers. And then we'll go to Riverside Drive and then to Cypress Street and then Seabreeze Drive. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Any objection? All right. All right, let's start with our legal counsel then, please.
This is, excuse me, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding where the Board of Adjustment acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At a quasi-judicial hearing, it is not the board's function to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the Code of Ordinances in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. Are there any members of the board wishing to disclose any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest this evening?
I just wanted to state that I live on Chesapeake and I know the applicants for whichever order it is. Our first one, number 3. So property does not impact my property, but I do know the property owners.
Okay. And that's not necessarily considered a conflict of interest. Any others this evening?
I might have a conflict on number 6. I doubt it, but when we get to that item, I'd like to inquire, and then we'll go through that if we could. Okay.
Sure, not a
Okay.
problem.
Thank you.
And anyone wishing to speak this evening, if you could please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So sworn.
Okay. Thank you. So our first item tonight is 783 Chesapeake Drive, and let's have a brief statement from the staff, please, if you would, Patricia.
This is Pat McNeese, Principal Planner. This is a request for 1 6-month extension to application number 16007 for a variance to the minimum side yard setback and the minimum rear yard setback in order to construct a two-story addition pursuant to an order granting a variance dated March 3rd, 2016. There are two conditions to be met to hear this. The first is that the written request was submitted in a timely manner, and the second is that the surrounding owners be noticed. Both of those have been met. No correspondence was received. Staff recommends approval of the extension that would extend them to September the 3rd, 2018.
Okay, thank you. A statement from the applicant, if you would, please, Doctor? Yes, please.
First off, I'd like to thank the board for their time this evening.
Could you move the mic closer to your face? Thank you.
And I was here 2 years ago, and I certainly didn't expect to be back here again asking for an extension. It was not for lack of trying. We've had 3 architects in the meantime, number of plans, none of which came in anywhere near our budget. And coupling that with some significant family health issues lead us to where we are today. So we would respectfully request that the board extend our variance. We have a plan that we think will meet our need, fit within the variance, and also fit within our budget.
Okay, any questions? Any comments from the audience? Are we ready for a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Turner,
Yes, approve.
Mr. Eisner,
Yes.
Mr. Burris,
Yes.
Mr. Grabowski,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go then to item number 7. This is 489 Riverside Drive, at the corner of Craig Drive. It's a variance to the length and the centering requirements for a single-family dock. Staff, please.
Yes, the location has been given. This is on behalf of the owner, Jeff Jennings. The zoning is R100. The land use is residential low. Basically, if the board would like to refer to an aerial photograph with a depiction of the dock layout that the applicant submitted, that might be best to explain what's going on here.
You're referring to this?
Yes.
For the benefit of those in the audience, there's an aerial photograph that you're welcome to look at. If you don't have it, we have extras available probably.
Okay. Basically, there are 2 criteria to be met in the Land Development Code with respect to placement of docks and walkways. The first is the length. The length of the dock has to be 1/2 or less of the width of the property at the water's edge. If you look at this property, you'll see that the dock is that's basically there's a dock lot. You have to access that portion across Riverside Drive. The property line obviously goes out into the water. The applicant also has a survey on file that shows that, and also shows the approximate edge of water. The width of the property at the approximate edge of water is about 60 feet, so that would limit the applicant to a 30-foot-long dock. The applicant has proposed a 72-foot-long dock, so that obviously exceeds the limit. The applicant has submitted a dock plan and a cross-section that shows about 2 feet mean low water at that 72-foot length and about 4 foot mean high water there. So that is the depth at that length that the applicant would need to reach to be able to dock and operate a vessel. That's what he's applying for. The second criteria is centering. This is with respect to the dock walkway extending off the property. That is measured with respect to the property line width. and you'll see the property line is out, basically out in the water. It's about 71 feet wide. That would put the applicant in the center 1/3. He would be required to have the dock be 23 feet from each neighbor, basically, and use that remaining 23 feet for placement of the walkway coming off the land. He's proposing to move that walkway south so that he has a 15-foot offset from the south neighbor and a 52-foot offset from the north neighbor. That's basically a summary of what he's asking for. The analysis, we've provided an extensive analysis, and we did notice this. We received one letter in opposition, which is in your packet. And to summarize, staff recommended findings. The first two describe the project, which I've covered. The third, the subject waterfront properties are regularly shaped, and the topography of the submerged lands in Creamer's Bayou adjacent to the property is gently sloping, necessitating a dock that exceeds the Land Development Code limit in order to reach sufficient water depth for vessel docking. The requested variance, therefore, does arise out of physical and environmental characteristics of the property. Number 4, the condition on the property for which the variance is requested has not been self-created. Number 5, literal enforcement of the dimensional requirements would prevent construction of a dock that reaches sufficient water depth and allows safe operation of a vessel, therefore denying the applicant reasonable use of the property. Number 6, granting of the variance would not confer a special privilege on this applicant, since single-family docks are allowed in this zoning district as an accessory use. And number 7, granting of the variance would not injure, impact the rights of owners of affected properties or create a nuisance or otherwise substantially negatively impact surrounding properties, since several surrounding properties have existing residential docks and the proposed placement of the applicant's walkway provides the most reasonable and safe layout. This report makes no finding with respect to navigation out in the water. That is the purview of the county. The applicant has, in the packet, completed a county application for the dock. Staff recommends approval of the variance for relief from the dock length and dock centering requirements. Are there any questions or comments?
Okay, thank you. For the benefit of the audience, normally we have questions from the board members, and then the applicant can make their comments, and you're welcome to cross-examine anybody. There's free cross-examination of the staff or the other opponents or the applicants. So if there's no objection, any questions from the board members, please, of the staff?
Yes, I was glad to hear that you said that people were noticed. I mean, I saw this letter of objection, but I didn't notice that it was, normally you say that people were noticed in the document itself here, but we didn't get that. Just clarifying. So was this the only letter of objection?
That was received prior to this meeting, yes.
Okay.
Number 4. We're talking about the staff report in number 4, public correspondence.
I'm missing
One letter in opposition was received and is included in the packet.
Yeah, I don't have that page.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. My
I'm
error.
sorry. There might be a couple packets, and I apologize, that were printed. That letter came in at the end of the day when I was printing
No, I
packets.
do have it.
And I do apologize
It was
for
my
that.
mistake. It was my mistake.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a
All right, and that opponent is also in the audience, I believe. Okay, any other questions?
Yes, I do. I need a better description of where their dock was and where they're looking. Is this pencil drawing that's in? Is that that's the replacement dock, correct?
I'm not aware that they're,
I have a drawing in here.
right, you're saying replacement? I either missed that or I'm not aware that there was a dock previously.
They're moving a dock.
To my knowledge, this is a brand-new dock, and there is no, I
There was
did
never
make
one
a
there.
statement. site visit. There's not one there now. I don't know if there was ever one there.
So this, then my question would be, the dock looking at this piece of paper to the left does not look like it's 15 feet away. And over here, they're saying that it's 15 feet away. Is that, I'm not following this.
Okay. The applicant's proposed location, and if we're looking at the aerial photograph with
Right.
the drawing on it that says scaled 1 inch equal 15. The applicant is proposing that the walkway is 15 feet north of the property line that's out in the water, that south property line, and 52 feet south of the other property corner that's out in the water. And that's shown on his site plan. This aerial is close to being to scale, but it's also an aerial, so it's not flat. That's not really an official representation of the site plan. It's good for judging the dock with respect to other properties. But the site plan submitted shows the measurements, and those are the measurements.
Right, because the letter is in the complaint states that it's not to scale. That was the,
aerial photograph,
Right.
I would say it's not exactly to scale because it's an aerial. We all know it's curved, right? If anybody's used the property appraisers, right, you need a survey or a site plan because of the curvature of the earth. So you can draw on an aerial to represent generally, but it's not a site plan. So that's correct.
Any other questions? Jackie, questions? George? Okay, let's hear from the applicant, please.
Hi, my name is Darren Halfman. I'm with Marine Products, and I'm representing Jeff Jennings. We do have a drawing here also in the packet of an actual to scale that goes to the county, and that is to scale drawing. And if you did take an actual measurement on this, it is 1 inch to 50 feet also, so it is really, really super close to being a scale. But this also was supplied, and this is a scale drawing as well of the dock. And we moved the dock out of the middle 1/3 of the property to one side to give us more room from the opposing neighbor, to give a safe, room between each dock and stuff. We put it over as far as we can to the other side to give us as much room as possible from the opposing neighbor. And there's also already a break in the mangroves there as well. There's already a path through the mangroves there as well, so I won't have to do any disturbance of cutting down any more mangroves on the shoreline or anything.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the board? Okay. I do have one. As far as water and navigation control, and I know we don't have any jurisdiction over what they do, but I thought that the water and nav regulation state is 18 inches of
Correct.
freeboard?
Right.
And you want to go to 2 feet of depth?
It's roughly 18 inches, 2 feet. I mean, sometimes during winter tides or summer tides, it fluctuates. So I'm only trying to propose to have the dock as far out as the neighbor's docks are.
Yeah, I can see they're about equal in
Right,
length.
correct,
so-
right.
Okay, if there are no other questions from the board,
I do have one question. I just wanted to clarify, make sure I'm reading the letter of opposition correctly. Is that from the property, from the north or south? Like if I'm looking at the aerial photo, is it the property owners to the left or right?
Looking at it, it's on the left, the dock.
It's these, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
my question was about 18 inches of water at low tide, just if there's any question. Okay, any other comments from the audience? Mr. Robinson, I believe. Please come forward. Can you please come up, sir? We got to be on the record. Take your time.
My name's Tim Robinson. I live I have the adjacent dock, which actually, to answer your question, in looking at it, we're to the right, not the left.
Oh, thank you, sir.
And we really don't have a problem with moving it to 1/3 or the length. I'm not sure what we're asking for. The analysis says it could be 25 feet from our dock, yet this, which I presume is the site plan, shows it to be 40 feet with the boat lift attached and 52 to the dock. So I don't understand what it is that we're doing, because it appears from the pencil sketch that you referenced, it's angling to the right towards my dock, which is on the right side. If it's going to be 25 feet or approximately, since we don't really know, then we think that could impact, I think the term is substantially. If, again, this is what we use, I don't object to it, because this shows it to be 40. So which is it? I've contacted environmental management at the county. They don't have anything to do with projection or design, either one. So if I don't know what I'm going to get, then I have to oppose it. If I do, and if this is what we're going to approve, then that's fine. The question is, which are you recommending? It's contradictory.
Okay, who wants to answer that question? Anybody? Yes, sir.
Yeah, you'll have to go to the podium so you can be heard on the record.
How you doing?
Good, very good. Go ahead. Yeah, I can show you too, just to stay here and stuff. Yeah, I got 40 feet. As you can see, I have 40 feet written here, and that will be at this point as well. And up here, it is 25 feet. 25 to 30 feet is the scale up here at this point. It will be 40 feet down here to your dock here. And I'm going off,
Sir, would you be able to kind of explain to us as you explained?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I can. Okay. Yeah. See, I got a picture here, and on my drawing here, the scale drawing here, it says 40 feet down here, which is approximately down here. Now you're going to be about 25 to 35 feet here. That's why I have this drawing here to scale as well.
Sir, excuse
Yes.
me, can you come up front here so we can see what you're
I
talking
sure can.
about?
You can see here, like on my,
Oh, this makes sense now.
yeah, on my drawing here, you can see where I have the 40 feet written down here, and that's about to his dock going across here. Now, at the boat lift where that's going to be up here, it's between 25 and 30
Would you
feet.
do us a favor?
That-
It's showing this report.
I wish we had an easel.
It's fine. It's
And if you look at your, and I'm basing this off a straight property line, and I'm basing this off a straight property line as well. Now, if you look at your drawing, you see after the property line goes that way, actually. So you're not really having a straight property line going up this way. And actually, if you look at it, this dock here actually crosses over Jeff Jennings' property line, actually. His extended property line, this dock actually crosses over too far this way. So that's why I moved it to the furthest point this way as I can to give us the most room we have between this dock. But, at this point here, I'm going to be 15 feet here from the property line. But at this point here, I'm only going to be about 2 feet off this guy's property line here. So I couldn't move it over any further than what I am now.
Then the problem is with the adjacent dock from the other property.
This one here.
Right, if that one was on the center
We'll
of the
straighten
property,
all this out
then
at
you
some
would have
point
been-
after all this.
That's what I thought.
Just,
We need to have a record as to what's going on.
yeah,
Gotcha.
just to help clarify, and Darren, correct me if I'm wrong, the 40 feet is to the walkway,
Right, correct.
and he's showing a 12-foot boat lift, so that leaves about 28 feet or so
Right. It's just
from the boat lift. So
puzzle.
maybe if you just use terminology, that would help.
Go back to the mic.
oh, right.
I mean, as your analysis on the property lines as well, I mean, the way the property lines angle so bad that way so far, there's no real way to put a straight, it's not a straight property line. So I'm just using a property line as right next to your dock as you saw here, but his property line goes this way, and your dock actually crosses over his extended property lines. So I got to move the dock over as far as I can this way to give you guys enough room between each other, which will be about 25, 30 feet between here. And I can't go any further over where I'll be on the other guy's property. So I'm trying to do the best I can for you to have the most room.
I don't know if we're all clear, but is the applicant and the opponent, are you in agreement or no? Mr. Robinson, you're still not happy? You're not clear or what?
This says 40.
You be on the microphone, please, sir.
This says 40 to 52, and the analysis says approximately 25. Approximately is a little too loosey-goosey for me. So if we're going to use this, and I know that the line on the right side is going to be that distance from mine, I don't have an objection. If we're going to do 25 feet approximately, then I do oppose it.
All right, where's the, can we, I lost the 25 foot somewhere. I'm sorry.
It's on page 3 of the analysis. Second paragraph down. It appears that presume it would be perpendicular. This dock shows an angle, which is why this doesn't correspond with the pencil drawing.
What does, this property line is straight, the property line is straight, and I'm following straight
Yeah.
with the property line.
It doesn't correspond
If-
with this, is what I'm saying.
I could help a little bit here. The centering requirements, and we apply these every day, right? Most of the time apply to lots that have lot lines that are parallel to each other. And the docks go pretty much straight out perpendicular. That's the presumption of the code. That's why the code's written that way. This is a different situation. As far as the approximate 25 feet, I scaled off the aerial. I should have used the site plan. The applicant shows 28 feet. So he's saying 25 to 30. It's in that area. Now we are talking about the end of the dock. The centering requirement has to do with the walkway. The angle of the dock, clearly the code contemplates that it would be perpendicular to the property line, but if it's angled, that would be something that the county would look at with respect to safety and navigation, which is one of their criteria for dock review. The city doesn't really get into regulation of safety.
The problem with that is nor does the county. The county doesn't have anything to do with that either.
Let's go to the board for a few minutes, Mr. Burris.
Yes, sir. Mr. Robertson is your name?
Correct.
Yes. Your dock is at the edge of your property, correct?
Well, that depends on what you define the property as. If we look at the water line, it is just within the third.
Not the water line, your
Could
property.
you go on the microphone, please, Mr. Robinson? Thank you.
Okay, state your question again so I can understand it.
The dock that you have is at the edge, at the end of your property line, correct?
No.
He's on Craig.
Depends on what you define the property line as.
Did he say the left or
This
the,
one.
this one?
Yes, this one right here.
Yes.
The very,
You're just about at where the other property begins, correct?
I can't tell. It looks to be within the third.
I'm sorry?
It looks to be within the third. My property? Is that what you're
Yeah.
asking?
Where the green line is at, your dock practically starts right there, correct?
It depends on where you define the property line. Yeah, well, it starts, it angles.
just a little.
I think there's some confusion because the property line, there's submerged lands, which is the exterior property line. So that's the submerged lands. I think that's where the discrepancy is coming in, is if you're taking it from the shoreline, then he's within the 1/3. If you're taking it from the submerged land line, then he's right on the property line between the two.
If we
So it
take,
depends on how the city measures the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. That would be a
if
good
we
question
take
for
the
the
lot
city.
itself, where the house is at, and you extend the end of his property line
But
out,
that's not how it works.
Nothing to do with it.
So if you look, he owns part of the submerged land underneath the water. So it depends on how, and that's a good question for the city, it depends on how it's measured. If it's measured from the shoreline property line, then he would be within the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. If it's measured from the submerged land property line, then it appears that he is right on the edge of the property line. So the city might be able to better answer how that's measured.
So to ask that question of the city, is it
I'm saying.
measured from the shoreline or the submerged?
So you can't, I mean, you could. this-
What I'd like to do is read section 59B,
what is it?
docks, piers, and shoreline stabilization structures. Item number 1, this has to do with the length. Private docks to be constructed within the waters of the county shall be constructed so that the length of the dock shall not extend from the mean high water line or seawall of the property further than 1/2 the width of the property at the waterfront. This requirement may be waived by the city manager, etc. Item 2, private docks and boat lifts must be constructed within the center 1/3 of the applicant's waterfront property or 50 feet from the adjacent property, whichever is less restrictive. That does not refer to the waterfront width. Staff uses the property line width for that center 1/3 measurement. So hopefully that answers the question. This staff report and the analysis used the approximate water line width, which is shown on the survey as edge of water, and was scaled as best we could on that survey for the length. Used the width of the property line for the centering.
And so for clarification, when you're saying the property line, are you saying the submerged property line, or are you saying the
Yeah.
waterfront property line?
The submerged property line,
So this would then determine the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
yes.
So then to clarify, for you, then it would be the furthest property line, the submerged property line, and then it appears that he is on, from the aerial, it appears that he would be on the property line between the two, if that is how the city measures it.
Could I ask a question? I'm at the risk of making it even more confusing. But they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Although in my profession, I think we prefer the 1,000 words. But I'm going to use the picture. I'm looking at this aerial photograph. All right. My question of the applicant, are you going to build the dock to look like this, the footprint? And I don't know what the water equivalent of the footprint is. You're going to build it like this. That's what you want to do. Now, Mr. Robinson, do you object to this particular proposed footprint for the
Yes.
dock? You say it's too close to your dock to the north?
It's subjective. We were told approximately 25.
But he's going to build this exact thing. If this is built, are you okay with that?
No, I'm not. But I'm okay with this because it shows 40 feet.
All right, what is your problem with this proposed aerial?
I think well, first of all, my problem with it,
Yes,
I
sir.
don't really have a particular problem with it other than the dock angles towards mine and makes it closer. If it was perpendicular and went straight out, it would not be approximately 25 feet. It would be according to this survey, which is, I guess, what this is, or the dock plan, 40 feet from the boat lift and 52 feet from the deck.
All right, so what you're saying then, you'd like a little dog leg in between the walkway and the actual walking pier.
No, it's not what I'm saying.
He wants it
If
the
you
same angle.
put the dock
You want this-
perpendicular out, it's not going to angle towards my dock.
You want it parallel to your dock.
That's what
Oh.
this is, yes.
All right, now to the applicant, are you willing to, just trying to see if we can agree, would you be willing to make the proposed dock parallel to Mr. Robinson's dock?
That wouldn't be an issue at all, other than me crossing over the other neighbor's property line.
But if you can make it a dog leg,
There's no way I can go at the same angle as his without. I'm already 2 feet from the neighbor's property line at the head dock. I'm already 2 feet from the neighbor. I can't go any further that way. I brought it over as far as I can. I left 2 feet to be kind. I mean, I can't go any further that way.
does the walkway and the dock have to be in a straight line? Can you make a dog leg, a little obtuse angle?
But I mean, if I curved it and brought the head dock out the other way, I'm on the other guy's property. I mean, the extended, you got to go off the extended property lines.
How close is too close, Mr. Robinson?
That's subjective. I don't know.
Is that a
Maybe
navigation
20
issue? Is that for water and navigation to decide?
They won't make that decision. I contacted them. They won't make that decision.
There is no too close.
They look at depth, they look at environmental issues, and they look at navigation.
Well, so look at navigation. They'll see if this proposal is going to impede navigation as it reflects on the neighbor's dock.
Well, I don't know. My point is this. We have two different measurements of the distance from my property. We have one that says, the analysis says maybe 25 feet. This says 40 to 52, which I just need to know which one you're going to approve.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. I'm just trying to decide what the proposal is for. Somebody in the audience wishes to speak. Maybe you'll help.
If you look at the
Your
plan,
name, sir?
If you look at the plan and you
Need your name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff Jennings. I'm the owner of 489 Riverside. If you look at the property plan, I'm just wondering if Mr. Robinson would approve my dock to be at the same distance from his property as his is from mine, because his dock is within inches from my property line. So I'd just like clarification as to why he is opposing me building a dock further away from his property line to help in navigation when his dock is literally going over my property line in the water area. So I guess I just want clarification in that regard.
Well, when you say it's close to your property, that's the submerged land we're talking about, right?
Yes, yes. If you look at the lines, you'll actually see on this picture, this aerial, it looks like his dock is actually on my property, to be honest. Do you all see what I'm referring to?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Point.
So if that's the case, although he has, yeah, this is my property right here. This is my property, and your dock's on my property. You see that? No?
It's encroaching on it.
Well, if you take my line right here and go like this.
Does the city staff acknowledge that other one is
Well-
encroaching?
The area would not convince me that the neighbor's dock is on his property. I'd have to have a survey or something.
I guess what I'm saying when I say my property, I'm talking about the line of the property that keeps going out straight.
Right.
He's actually going over my property line that continues to go out, because that's how we gauge.
That's how you build docks.
That's how you build docks. You try to stay within the property line where the water continues to go out. I'm not saying you're literally on my property line. You know, I'm just saying that I'm doing my best to plan and design this dock to be away from your property, and I'm actually closer to the neighbor's property, right on the edge.
I didn't realize I had more property, but I
Well-
just
Yes,
acquired some.
you own this property right here.
Just a point of clarification too, the variance that's requested is for a 72-foot dock to be constructed lengthwise, and then to place the walkway closer to the southern property line, so it's asking for a setback of 15 feet from the south property line and 52 feet from the north property line. So regardless of the aerial and the measurements that were there, or the site plan, the variance that is before you is asking for 15 feet from the southern property line and 52 feet from the northern property line. So that is what is requested, regardless of what those other measurements are, that is what is being asked for, and that's what you're supposed to consider. So I don't know if either of those actually depict the correct visual of what the request is, but that's the request that's before you.
So it's not a question
that
of
does
how
help,
long
thank
the
you.
deck is.
They are asking for a 72-foot dock. So the dock is only, under the code, is only allowed to be 30 feet. They're asking for an additional 42 feet.
The two decks, docks that are further north are the same length as the one that they're proposing.
I don't know, and it doesn't matter.
Okay.
There's been no testimony to that, and it doesn't matter. What does matter is, based on the criteria in your code, and I know y'all are tired of me saying that, but based on the right criteria in your code, does this application for a request for a 72-foot dock meet the criteria? And regardless of what the site plan or the aerial measurements, handwritten measurements say, the request before you is for a 15-foot setback from the southern property and a 52-foot setback from the property to the north.
On the shoreline.
As with the way that the city has measured it, it's from the shoreline.
Okay, then in that case, if he brings it to the center, perpendicular to his property, it will work then.
That's not what he's asking for. So it doesn't matter what might work, it matters what he's asking for. Now, it might matter what would work, because if what works ends up being within the code, then then that is not the minimum variance that's being requested, and then it doesn't meet the criteria. But that's up for this board to decide.
But Mr. Robinson is agreeing with this site plan, which is what the variance is, correct?
That's the way I'm reading it.
So then we're all in agreement, as long as we're not going by
I
this
think-
map.
And again, the whatever's provided by staff is whatever's provided by staff, but legally speaking, whatever's being requested, if that is a reflection and there's testimony and evidence to bear that out, that site plan is what's reflected in the variance, and those are identical, then yes,
Well, that's what he said.
then that's what you're to consider. I think the aerial may be throwing everybody off,
Right.
but it is there for a depiction, and the city has testified that it's not necessarily an accurate representation. But what is accurate is what's actually being requested.
Which
So-
is that 40 to 52, because of the angle situation from the dock, the proposed dock from the adjoining property line, of course. Yeah.
On an angle this way, so it might be, like I said, 25, 30 feet
Mm-hmm.
out there.
Sir, you got to be on the microphone. I'm sorry.
Apologize.
And I believe that 20, and if, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm looking at this, you have the dock, which is what is before us as part of the criteria that we are to look at. And then there are, what I'm assuming are the pilings for
A boat
the
lift.
lift itself.
Right.
So what is the application before us is to look at the dock. So the pilings then, of course, push the boat lift
Correct.
part of this structure
Correct.
closer to
Correct.
Mr. Robinson's, correct?
Correct. That is correct.
So that's maybe where that 25 to 28 foot
Right, correct.
lack of a exact number that Mr.
Right.
Robinson was looking for.
And the exact number
coming
is,
into
is very hard to get out in the water as well, and be, it's,
right.
you
It's
know,
water.
But the bottom line is, this is what the variance numbers were on. This is what Mr. Robinson agrees with, so we're all in agreement.
This is
with
what is
this.
proposed to be built.
Right.
And what
But-
we're
but-
arguing
but what-
over
but
is
what,
the
what Mr. Robinson is
site-
talking about though, he's afraid, see, this is saying the dock is 40 feet and the poles are, but at his head dock point out there, it's going to be 25, 30, and that's what he's not wanting. If it's going to be 40, he wants it to be 40, which it will be 40 here, but out there on the water where they both connect out there in the water, it might be 25, 30 out there because his dock goes on an angle.
And,
know.
and as far as that's concerned, you're talking about the dock heads where the lifts are at the end, at the very end of the dock where the extension is being asked for the extra 42 feet. That's not necessarily something that this board is considering. It might be part of the criteria if you determine that it's part of impact on surrounding property owners. However, that's something, when you're talking about having it go out that for safety and navigation, that's not something that's in the purview of this board. So that's something that would have to be considered. I don't know what regulatory body, I'm assuming it's going to be Pinellas County that's going to look at that, but that's not something that this board can make a determination on for those reasons.
Lady in the audience wanted to be heard. You're welcome to come forward if you like, ma'am.
And I apologize, ma'am, were you sworn in earlier? Okay.
Hi, I'm Robin Robinson. I'm Tim's wife. The statement that came up about the position of our dock really is, I feel, somewhat irrelevant in that, first of all, we didn't build the dock. We bought the property with the dock in existence. So consequently, in looking at the docks and the bayou there, when we purchased our property, we looked at what setbacks were and what requirements were, and had no idea that a dock could be placed that close to our existing property. That's kind of the issue at hand, in addition to just having a very hard time understanding what the actual width is going to be. And there is nowhere on what is being referenced as this site plan, this document, there's nowhere that states 25, 28, anything. It would appear that they're saying the closest anything would be to us is this 40-foot number. It's very deceiving. So this is why we were questioning things, is because we really couldn't, between this, as we've discussed, and this, with the hand-drawn dock into the water, couldn't figure out what we would be approving or objecting to. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. So those are my only
thank you.
comments.
Thank you. For whatever it's worth, and maybe not much, board members, if you look at the aerial photograph and you see these two boats on davits to the left, and those two docks, and you see the distance between those two docks, and there's these two boats on davits, and they're there. It looks like it's very easy to get in and out
That's right.
with those docks being that distance apart, which is a little bit longer, wider rather, than what we're talking about from this aerial photograph. But still, there's plenty of room for boats to navigate. Again, whatever it's worth, because we're not navigation control authority. See what I'm saying? Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Some consequence there. All right, any further questions or comments from anybody? Are we all clear as to what we're voting on? If we vote.
Well, just for clarification, would the applicant or the Robinsons like to make a final statement of any kind, just to make sure everyone gets all their due process?
Thank you.
No.
Yeah, I would.
Okay,
I
go
just-
ahead. Go ahead and
I
make
just
a
want to
final
know what you're going to vote on. Which one of these? Is it going to be the pencil angled
We haven't
dock?
made a motion yet, so we don't know.
Well, and I can make a clarification.
Okay, I
This
just-
board is not approving either the site plan or the aerial. While those are helpful depictions of what might be constructed, this board has been tasked with determining whether a variance should be granted to construct a 72-foot length dock. However, that's going to go a 72-foot length dock, perpendicular or not. That's not been determined. That's not in the purview of this board. And then a dock whose walkway juts from 15 feet from the south property line and 52 feet from the north property line. I don't know if that's helpful for you, but that's what the purview of this board is. So they're not approving either the aerial plan or the site plan. That's not what they're here for.
I contacted the county. They don't have anything to do with design. All they have to do with are the three things that I mentioned. So my question is, I guess you could build a dock as angled as you wanted, and that wouldn't be an issue for this board or anybody else. That's just,
Not necessarily. Not based on, if your concerns are the safety of navigation, that's not within the purview of this board. It's whether it meets the criteria that's set up forth in the code.
or it substantially impacts my property,
As
which I
long-
think that does.
And that's for another discussion on an appeal, but for this board, it is that if the evidence that has been presented today meets the criteria that is listed in their code, based on the evidence and testimony that they heard, if all the criteria are met, then they are required to grant the variance. Navigation and safety are not within the purview of this board.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Robinson?
Sure.
As far as the length of the proposed dock, it's about the same as the length of your dock. So you have no problem with the length of the dock.
No,
And the location of the dock is as far away from your dock as he can get, correct? It's 15 feet from the other side of the property.
it's
from the
15
south
feet
side. From
It's 15 feet from the
Other
other property.
on land, not.
Yes, the shoreline, which is
but
what
that's all
the
we deal
city
with is the land.
gives us as what is the measure. In the codes, we are to look at property line as defined as shoreline.
Right.
So from shoreline, which is part of the criteria that we are tasked with looking at, it is 15 feet from the one side and what was it?
That's the other man's
52.
property. I don't.
Correct. That's
Yeah.
so I'm just stating the whole thing. 15 feet from one side and 52 to your side.
On the shoreline.
Yes, on the
So-
shoreline, which is what the city is tasking us to do.
Well, then,
I'm just stating these are the constraints that we have as a board as to the rules and the laws that we are tasked with interpreting.
And maybe for clarification, a question for the city. Is there any requirement within the code that a dock be built perpendicular to the shoreline? Or is our code silent on that? The city's code silent on that?
It's silent.
Okay,
no.
so unfortunately, there's nothing that this board can determine on how it gets built, whether it gets built perpendicular to the shoreline or if it gets built at an angle depending upon the depiction of the.
Then I would have to say, as subjective as that is, I object to this, definitely, because I don't know how it could affect my property. It could really affect it big time, or it might not. So,
Okay.
and I assume you do as well, Robin.
Okay. Any other comments from the public, cross-examination? If not, are we ready for a motion and discussion on the motion?
Make a motion to approve.
On the mic. Speak in the mic.
I'm sorry. I make a motion to approve
I'll second.
as stated by the city.
I'll second.
Our motion is second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call vote, please, Ms.
Ms.
Young.
Turner,
Approve.
Mr. Eisner,
Approve.
Mr. Burris,
Yes.
Mr. Grabowski,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. No, no.
Okay.
That was not easy. You're welcome to stay if your item has already been heard. We appreciate the audience, but you have a question, sir? Can we come back and, all right, you're welcome to, we'll reopen the public hearing for item number 3, Doctor?
I think it was item number 1, the extension.
Yeah, the first
Yeah.
one.
Oh, 3 on that, right.
3. I'd
correct,
like to hear
sorry.
what he has to say.
Yeah.
Thank you. I forgot to mention when I was up here earlier that we're no longer doing a second-story addition. We're doing a one-story addition because we couldn't afford the two-story. So I don't know if that changes anything. The setbacks are the same. But the second thing, my understanding after the first meeting was that the setbacks are measured from the property line. And so on the side setback, that's an easy one. In the rear setback, we have a rear lot line.
Wait. All we considered tonight was the extension.
Right.
I think
I was
these are
just looking
appropriate
for a
questions
clarification.
These are appropriate questions for staff. They can be
Okay.
asked
All right,
after
maybe
the
you
meeting
can
on a
talk-
different day.
All right, so the 2 stories are non-issue then.
I can't answer that question,
Right,
but that
okay.
is not part of
Heather
this
is-
application, or not has been
Heather,
not
could
been
you mind
noticed.
talking to Dr. Morasso about that?
That can be done after the meeting or at a different time.
Okay, thank you.
Answer his question. All right, thank you. All right, then. Items number 4 and 5, application 1809 and 1814. We taking them separately or together?
Those are going to have to be taken separately.
Separately?
They're 2
All right.
separate issues and 2 separate
Okay.
criteria.
Okay. All right, Cypress Streets, lots 41 and 42. Ms. Patricia.
This is a variance to the non-conforming lots of record requirements in order to allow construction of 2 single-family residences with placement of 1 residence on each lot. These are non-conforming in the R70A zoning district. The applicant is Habitat for Humanity of Pinellas County. These are located on East Cypress Street. The minimum lot width for that district is 60 feet. Both of these lots are platted at 50 feet. The reason that the applicant is here today is because of a criterion in the non-conforming lots section having to do with common ownership. The applicant owns 2 lots next to each other. The review criteria for variances for non-conforming lots is specifically in section 215.025A. enumerated here with the staff analysis. This application was properly noticed. There were no responses received. And just a summary of the findings of fact. The two lots, Lot 41 and Lot 42, are each individual lots of record in the Lake Butler Villa Coast subdivision as of the date of the adoption of the LDC, of the Land Development Code. The Lake Butler Villa Coast subdivision was platted prior to 1912 and was created prior to any zoning ordinance that would apply to areas within the city limits. Number 4, both Lot 41 and Lot 42 are currently vacant, and neither one has ever been combined with any other existing neighboring lot. Number 5, granting the variance would not reduce the area or width of Lot 41 or of Lot 42. So they would remain as originally platted. And number 6, the hardship has arisen from the ownership characteristics of the property, not the physical property itself, and not from purchase by the applicant. Staff recommends approval of the variance for relief from the non-conforming lot of record requirements.
Before we go any further, I have a procedural question. For about 10 years, I represented Habitat for Humanity, kind of as a pro bono thing. Is that any, I haven't done any work for them for the last 10 years. Not a problem, right?
No.
Okay.
Do you stand to gain from the passage of either of these applications?
No, ma'am.
Then no.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then, the applicant wish to make a statement?
Good evening. My name's Ken Rush. I'm the CEO at Habitat for Humanity. As was earlier described, we purchased these lots from a private owner. When we made the purchase, actually, it was a combined lot, Lot 41 and 42, originally platted as 2 individual 50-foot wide lots. Under further investigation and starting to go into site planning with the city is when we realized that the area was actually zoned for a 60-foot wide requirement for each lot. The reason we're asking for the variance is real simple. We want to build 2 houses. We have 2 families that have already looked at the lots. They requested Tarpon Springs, which we haven't had lately. And quite frankly, these have already been technically assigned to a homeowner candidate. So what we are asking is that the city would grant us the ability to go ahead and build 2 single-family residences on the 50-foot wide lots as they were originally platted. And of course, the length is a total non-issue whatsoever. That's all.
Okay, any questions of the staff or the applicant from the board? Any objections from?
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
On each lot, what will be the distance from the dwelling to the end of the property? Will it be reduced down to 5 feet, if that's the case?
If the actual setback requirements for the area, we would still meet those setback requirements front, both sides, and rear, as they are currently
Which
written.
means the homes are going to be smaller.
We actually build homes based on the size of the family. These families, I do believe, one's going to be a 3-bedroom and one's going to be a 4. But the modest size of our houses actually doesn't create a hindrance on either of the setback requirements, side, front, or rear.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any objections from the neighbors? Patricia? Any
We did
comments?
not receive any written
Okay.
correspondence.
All right, any questions? Not yet. Any questions from the board as to the applicant or the staff? Any further questions? All right, let's go to the audience. Any comments from the audience? Yes, sir.
My name is Artemis Kousathanis. I live at 541 Division Street in Tarpon Springs. I also own the house at 540 Cypress Street, across the street from the 2 properties in question. I'm also a real estate agent. So from a realtor's perspective, is the way I see this. This property was listed as one individual property. It was sold as one lot. As one lot, I see it as a conforming lot. I don't see it as a non-conforming lot. When it's purchased by somebody, they should do their due diligence and see if it's a buildable lot at that point in time. When it was purchased as a one conforming lot, I feel that it should stay as a single-family home that's buildable on a 100-foot wide lot by the length of the property. The rules have been put in place to make changes, even though prior to when the rules were put in place, the lot sizes were 50-foot wide. That's not the case anymore. So, unfortunately, I oppose 2 single-family homes on the property. I think it should be 1 single-family home on the property.
Any comments from the board, Mr. Burris?
Yes. The city question for the city. Was this a one lot in the past, or it was 2 lots going back when it was deeded?
I did not locate a record of the 2 lots being combined into 1 lot.
They were being sold together, and they were purchased together.
The staff report talks about the 2 lots. They came into common ownership in 2005. And Habitat for Humanity purchased both lots in 2017. Before 2005, they were owned by 2 different people. But I didn't find a record of the 2 lots being combined into 1 lot.
Since 2005 was the last time, then there were 2 lots then.
If they were sold individually, I can understand if one person had purchased lot 42 and said, I wanted to build a home, and it's a non-conforming lot, then I can understand wanting to apply for a variance and granting a variance to build a home. But being that both properties are owned jointly and they were sold together as 1 lot with a 100-foot wide length, which meets the requirements of our code, then I think we should honor our code and build a single-family home, which we're taking a conforming lot and turning it into a non-conforming lot so that we can build 2 single-family homes on them, as opposed to taking a we're trying to turn it backwards, even though we're currently in a state where we can follow the rules.
Can I ask you a question? What evidence did you have that this was sold as 1 lot?
I'm a real estate agent. I pulled it up on the MLS. There's 1 sale price. The lots were not sold separately. They were not sold. Lot 42 was sold for $25,000 and lot 41 was sold for $25,000. They were sold as a 1 unit.
But the lot has 2 different lot numbers on it. So my question back at you would be, how was it sold as 1 lot? I know both lots were sold at one time. I'll agree with that. But my question, I'm trying to understand what your claim is. If it was sold as lot 43 and they split it up to 41 and 42, you're correct.
The plots have been...
Allow me to finish. 1 second. So you made a statement that it was sold as 1 lot. So it really wasn't. It was still sold as 2 lots, maybe in 1 deal. I'll listen to that, correct?
In the multiple listings, when a property was listed, it was listed as 1 property.
Do you have that with you?
I do not, but I can provide it.
Just so you know, we cannot use that as evidence. Because if you brought that and it was showing that, then you can determine that to be true.
Well, you can use his testimony as evidence, but then you have to determine what the credibility of that testimony is.
Okay.
And in looking, the general warranty deed, which is on file with the clerk of the court, is showing lot 41 and lot 42. So it is showing 2 lots, as do the property appraiser's, website records showing 2 separate lots. So
with 1 tax ID number, correct?
With
1 tax ID number.
The owner or the purchaser doesn't determine if it's 2 lots. There's lot 41, lot 42.
There could be 5 lots in there, but if there's 1 tax ID number, that's 1
That's
parcel.
the owner.
There's actually 2 parcel ID numbers, but the property appraiser will commonly combine adjacent properties for purposes of a tax bill, if you will.
Right.
Even if they aren't combined with respect to the plat.
Yeah, and looking
There are
at,
two parcel ID
yeah, on
numbers.
these, you can see the parcel, as, you know, as staff is stating, the parcel IDs, there are two parcel ID numbers with the Pinellas County property records.
I have one more question for you.
Sure.
If the owner, present owner, were to sell one of the property, just hypothetically speaking, and build on one, would you still have an objection?
I would, because now he's taking a conforming lot and turning it into a non-conforming lot. He should not be able to separate it. He should not be able to split that property.
I don't.
property's already
is
split.
The property's split. He's not splitting anything. That's why I'm not understanding where you're going with the conforming and non-conforming.
I believe there is, I've run across this issue and from my work history. And when if there's two properties that are owned separately by two different people, then there is an issue of a non-conforming situation. But once the property owner owns the property next to it or adjacent, connecting the two properties together, then all of a sudden it changes the rules. Is that correct?
That is the reason that the applicant is before you today, is the common ownership criteria and your.
Hence the purpose of them requesting a variance, because there's no reason for a variance right now because it's a conforming situation. They can build on that property.
Could I ask you a question, Artemis?
Sure.
The rental property you own, is that on one lot or two lots?
It is on one lot.
And how wide is that lot?
It's a 50-foot wide lot. That house was built in the 50s.
Yeah, and you have a 50-foot lot,
And
50 and a small house on that lot.
right.
And this is a 60-foot lot, is that correct?
It's 250.
It's 250, the same as yours. And I'm concerned about the character of the neighborhood, and I didn't visit the site this time, but I've been down there a number of times on a bicycle, and the houses on that street are of the same general one house per lot size, as I recall. I don't know if that's something I'm getting evidence or not.
Well, that's not part of this criteria.
But the character of the neighborhood is the same one house per lot, as I recall.
Primarily, but not all of them. The lot directly across from me isn't on one lot, and I believe yours is on more than just one lot. So there's a couple properties on that street already that have 100-foot wide lots, and of course we're trying to change, the neighborhood and make it a more desirable neighborhood by changing the rules when the minimum requirement should be a 60-foot wide lot. So now we're trying to go backwards as opposed to following the rules that were set in place.
Question of staff pursuant to that is it a fair statement to state that because there's two houses on two lots instead of one, that's going to negatively affect the property values in the neighborhood?
That's also not
That's
part of this
one of our criteria. It
No,
says
it's
it-
not. If you look at the criteria for this is different than
Values
your.
of adjacent property values, it's mentioned
The
several
lot
times.
consists of at least one entire lot of record on the effective date of the code. The lot was not created in violation of a previous zoning ordinance. The lot was not combined with the neighboring lot under common ownership in order to allow the existing improvements on the neighboring developed lot to meet applicable setbacks. Those are the criteria for this non-conforming lot variance application. They're not your standard variance criteria.
Oh,
Based on the way the lot is right now, they can very comfortably build a single-family home and follow all the rules without having to request a variance.
Sir,
Any-
other than your objection, what is your main concern other than this technical concern? What are you afraid of if he puts two houses on there? What's going to happen versus one?
Well, I'm not afraid of anything per se. I live, as I said, at 541 Division Street in Tarpon Springs. I live on a 50-foot wide lot there. The houses are very close to each other. Personally, I wish I had more room. I've tried to purchase my neighbor's property so that I could expand my yard. I think that's probably one of the reasons why rules have gone in place to make lot sizes a little bit larger so that you're not as close to your neighbors, and it, I think, increases the value of a neighborhood if you can build a little bit of a larger home on a nicer piece of property as opposed to a smaller home on a narrow piece of property.
So you would say your main concern is that it would affect the value of homes in the area.
That's a personal concern. That's part of the problem. But again, I don't foresee a need to make change. To go backwards as far as, again, something that we've put in place to try to go forward with.
And you just,
as far as a community even.
And our legal counsel just stated that we're not, in this particular case, not to consider that.
In this case, your criteria are not your standard 7 criteria,
Okay.
because this is a specific set of criteria for a non-conforming lot. And perhaps another question, a clarification question of
But
staff.
it is a conforming lot, correct?
No. So
what makes the lot non-conforming?
I have a clarification question that might make a difference for staff.
Sure.
So the lots as presented, assuming hypothetically someone wanted to build a single family home on these 2 lots, would they not have to replat it or have it combined to be 1 lot in order to meet the setback requirement?
They would have to replat it or combine them in order to meet the minimum district standard with respect to lot width.
Okay.
If this variance were not granted.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know
Got a
if that
question.
helps any, but
Mr. Burris?
Yes. Although the location map is not the best source of information, the subject site is about the same size as about 50 other lots in the area. You expect the city or anybody that owns those lots to double them up in order to build 1 house? That's what you're saying, basically.
No, I'm not
You're
saying.
changing the shape of the city the way it's been done 50 years ago. That's why we have these problems. So we have either to accept the ordinance, give the variance, or accept it as it is.
I pick it up, but I can't bend it.
Whether you have 50-foot wide lot or you need 60, that's irrelevant at this point.
Well,
My opinion.
I know it's completely irrelevant because your requirements are, the city requires a 60-foot wide lot, and if you own the adjacent property, then you have more than 60 feet. He has 100 feet he can build on.
All right, I'm going to
You're trying to subdivide the lots and build 2 separate properties.
We've discussed this long enough, I think. And I hate to be a chairman and say we've had enough discussion on this one item.
well, let's be clear. He is an affected party because
Yes.
he is an adjacent property owner. So
But
would you
have
like
any-
to speak as well, sir? Okay. So we'll
all right,
just,
you want to say anything new, sir? Anything else? We've already heard? Okay. Any further comments from the public then?
My name's Steve Harris. I'm at 521 Cypress. I'm directly west lot. I think my lot's 75 or 100 feet. No one's ever come up to me and said, you could fit 2 houses on your property. Or it's always something like, man, you have a nice big lot. Or, man, you have a bigger lot than the neighbors. These are neat red brick roads. When you're talking about Tarpon Springs, I mean, building a house on a 50-foot lot isn't Tarpon Springs. It was, and I understand these lots are non-conforming, right? The 2 lots, to build a house on each one. There's probably a reason for that. Progress and change and luring other people in. A lot of people don't want to move to Tarpon Springs if they're going to have to be on a lot like that. Habitat for Humanity, that's different. It's probably a great organization. but as a neighbor, you don't want to see it. And they're going to be nice houses regardless. They'll make property value go up. They're going to be two little nice houses, but they don't fit. They don't fit. And for many reasons, that's why it's non-conforming. Here's what makes sense. The original owners who bought that, 2 lots, they still own it. They come in, original owners, and say, we need a variance because we bought it however many years ago, 50, 100 years ago. And that would be fair, right? You buy 2 lots, everything's legal at the time to build 2 houses. Who cares how long? Maybe you leave it to your grandchildren to have. But to get sold and it's apart and this and that, here comes a law. Okay, well, you've got these two lots and you see the new changes. Well, make something happen then so it can carry through or do what's right. One house makes perfect sense there. It's going to look good. It's going to look great, and the family's going to be happy there. Think about the family. Yeah, you're going to be happy with any house if you get help with it. But, that doesn't mean it has to be put in that kind of lot. It's kind of common sense. I mean, the house is going to be nicer, more space. It'll make the neighborhood look nicer. It's not all 50-foot lots. It's someone like me, I'm going to have a house the same distance from me or 10 foot farther. But as far as Tarpon Springs goes and looking right and fitting, it seems pretty simple. That's what I wanted to say. You guys are up here making decisions to better Tarpon Springs. That seems going to make it better. And if it happens once now, good. Go look at Trinity area, what they're building out there. Or, it's going to be more charming. Think about it. A nice house on a 100-foot lot. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, Mr. Harris? George?
I have a question. Is there for the city? Is there a recent survey for these particular 2 lots? Because this one seems to be from September 2003.
Okay, the packet includes the surveys that the applicant submitted,
Just 2017.
and those are dated October. The survey date is October 16th, 2017. And then it was drawn on October 17th, 2017. These lots, the recorded purchase date was October 12th, 2017. So they must have had them surveyed, I guess, immediately with or after they purchased.
Right, in 2003, there were 2 lots.
Yes.
Okay, the survey is in front of us.
In 2017, there were 2 lots.
The
So-
survey is dated 2017.
Okay, that's fine.
One more quick thing. As far as building one house, you're not imposing on some beautiful 50, 60-year-old live oaks. They were out there testing them the other day to work around them. So it isn't just some clear open slate to just build 2 houses. All of a sudden, we've got to take down this tree or whatever it might be. Does that sound familiar with what you don't want happening? And just to make sure, right now they're non-conforming. So however long ago it was, they decided we need bigger lots. Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
I know this is not part of the case before you say this.
I'm going to ask you not to ask the question. You can do what you want, but I'm going to ask you not to ask it if it's not part of the case.
Would you be able to let me know what the size lot of 43 and 40 are?
It's not relevant.
I don't know that right now. I'd have to look on the property appraiser's website to see the size that they give. I mean, you've got the property cards for these two properties, and the best you've got in the packet is to look at that and see if you can judge their relative sizes on those two property cards.
One last question. Will this lot accommodate a four-bedroom home? As the gentleman mentioned from Habitat of Humanity?
I'm sorry, a four-bedroom home?
That's why he said yes, a four-bedroom home.
The applicant has not proposed any or requested any variances to setbacks at this point. So the applicant would need to comply with all the bulk standards of the city. I don't have the expertise to tell you whether that would allow a four-bedroom as opposed to a smaller or larger.
Then it's possible that he will come before this board for more adjustments, for variances.
Well, anyone can come before the board with requests. They've indicated that well, I should let the applicant speak for themselves, but they have not requested that.
Could I ask a question before you get... Patricia, these two lots combined make a total of 100 by 140 feet. And they could be subdivided instead of north, south, east, and west, and each lot would be 100 by 70, and the lots would be conforming. Is that correct?
You're saying subdivide them the other way?
Yes.
Well, they would have to meet all the standards of the city, and I'm not sure what the effect would be, but you'd have to have access and utilities and everything else.
There's public right-of-way on both sides, Cypress Street, and there's an alley in the back. But I'm sure they can get a driveway from the Cypress Street to the back house, but that's theoretically possible.
That's also not part of this application.
I understand,
or
but
the criteria that you are.
But it's possible to build two houses on these two lots.
And for the record, it
by-
just doesn't matter.
Thank you. But you can build two houses on these two lots and just rotate them 90 degrees, I think. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to respond to you're asking if it is going to be a four-bedroom. To my knowledge, one of the houses will be a four-bedroom house, yes.
Okay. Are you planning to come back for any other variances?
We have no need to. There's one more that we have to present tonight about the sidewalk, but we would have no reason. Like I said before, we meet all of the current setback requirements for any single-family residence in that area. Side setbacks, front setbacks, rear setbacks. We could build a six-bedroom house on that property and still meet the setback requirements that the city has.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further comments from the staff, from the board, from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, are we ready for a motion?
And just a reminder that your criteria, again, are just different from your regular criteria. You guys don't see this a lot. So.
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
Can we put a caveat on the order that no further variances will be approved on this?
You can't make that
Can't do
condition.
Okay,
Always come.
okay.
Any further comments, questions?
One more
Yes,
point.
sir.
Can we delay this to get plans of the homes, of the actual structures?
You cannot. That is not part of this application. The application that is before you is based on the non-conforming lot. It doesn't matter what they're planning on building there. You don't have a setback variance in front of you. You don't have anything that requires a site plan, and they're not required to provide it, so no.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, roll call, please, Kim.
Ms. Turner,
Approve.
Mr. Eisner,
Approve.
Mr. Burris,
Yes.
Mr. Obowski,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott.
Yes. Okay, you've got 2 years to start construction. And the next item, same property, this is a sidewalk waiver, application 18-14. Denise?
These are the same properties as your last item, same owner. This is a request for a waiver to construct the sidewalks for the two proposed single-family residences for these lots. The staff report and background describe basically what is currently existing on East Cypress Street. In this is the 500 block of East Cypress Street. There is one sidewalk section on the north side that's built at Levis and East Cypress. There are no other sidewalk sections on that side. The south side has a sidewalk. South side of East Cypress Street has a sidewalk extending its entire length. The review criteria for variances is for the sidewalk waiver. That's in section 132.01B of your code. The applicant, just a little more background, and this is part of the analysis. The applicant has requested this to basically to avoid removing or impacting 4 trees that they list, at least 3 of which we've confirmed are protected trees. The city has looked at this area, and the trees may be impacted by the construction regardless of who constructs the sidewalk. But there don't seem to be any other impediments to, physical impediments to construction of the sidewalk. The property is located within the basically downtown area, very close, or in-town area, very close to community amenities like the elementary school and other shopping, fairly close to trail and pedestrian connections. And this would be an area that the city's sidewalk program would likely prioritize for installation of sidewalks. We looked at both the conditions on site and basically the justification for whether the sidewalk should or should not be constructed. This was properly noticed. There were no responses received. Just like to summarize the findings. Just starting with number 2, we've already covered the description of the proposal. Number 2, on page 4 of the staff report, the environmental conditions as stated by the applicant indicate that installation of the required sidewalk segments would damage existing protected trees. There appear to be no other physical impediments to sidewalk construction in this area. Number 3, there is one existing sidewalk segment built on the northwest corner of East Cypress Street. And then there is a sidewalk on the south side. The north side includes 6 built residential properties and 3 vacant properties, 2 of which are under the applicant's ownership. The stated need, number 4, for the waiver arises from the anticipated damage to the trees. However, this is not unique to the property with respect to planned sidewalks in the city. Based on the current knowledge of conditions, it is presumed to be otherwise practical to design and construct the sidewalk along the right-of-way. Number 5, the conditions of the property were not self-created and did not result from an action by the applicant. Number 6, the right-of-way area is presumably sufficient to accommodate a sidewalk since there's one already there. There is no additional right-of-way needed. And then number 7, strict application of the sidewalk construction requirement would not be technically impractical in terms of engineering design, but could presumably impact protected trees located along the right-of-way and near the front property line of the applicant's lot. I did not determine, by the way, whether the trees were which trees were on the property as opposed to the right-of-way. They're all either in the right-of-way or very close to it. Staff recommends denial of the waiver of the requirement for sidewalk construction based on the applicant not meeting all of the criteria for that waiver.
And before questioning, because this might inform your questioning, I know you guys saw a sidewalk waiver, I believe it was last meeting, but you guys don't see these very often. So these are different criteria than your normal criteria. They must meet 1 and 2, and then 1 of the other 4. So they have to meet 1 and 2 on page 3, and then they have to meet 1 of the 4 on page 3 and 4. So 1 and 2 on pages 2 and 3, and then 1 of the 4 on pages 3 and 4. And if I've just confused you, let me know.
Makes sense. It's fine. Okay, can we hear from the applicant, please?
So as was described, the sidewalk actually, to the neighbor's mention of the trees earlier, we've actually had a certified arborist go out and look at both lots. He's actually identified every tree on both lots, identified them from invasive species through trees that are protected through the Pinellas County and the city of Tarpon Springs. There's one tree that actually is the one that we're more worried about than anything else when it comes to the sidewalk. It's a 34-inch diameter oak tree, and that tree actually sits approximately 14 or so feet inside the property line. According to the city, you cannot construct anything within 20 feet of a protected tree. The sidewalk would actually impact the root system of that tree because 8 feet or so of the easement itself to put the sidewalk in is within that 20-foot diameter. Other than that, there are a couple sable palms which technically are protected by the state of Florida, and I won't go there. But on lot 42, there's also 2 other obstructions that I don't know that were on the record. There is a power pole that is within the easement that also would be a hindrance to go around that is really not a movable obstruction. Duke Energy would probably say sorry. And there's also a transformer-type pedestal that's actually out in the easement area as well. The sidewalk is one of these things we run into in every municipality throughout the county. I know it's a big thing now. Walking traffic's a big thing. Pedestrian traffic, we see this a lot for older neighborhoods that have not had. The variance basically was based on this criteria. I actually asked one of our staff members if we were to reduce the size of a pedestrian sidewalk to a 3-foot as the 4-foot that's actually required, would we be able to get at least a 3-foot pedestrian? The pedestals and the pole, the requirement from the building department, we were told, is that sidewalk has to remain 2 feet off of those obstructions, a vertical obstruction. So again, if you take the power pole and you move that sidewalk 2 feet, we're almost encroaching on the actual property owner's property. But we actually feel that we could probably put a 3-foot sidewalk down along that easement area with less impact to the root systems of the trees that are there, and also to still be able to snake it around the actual vertical obstructions that are there as well. I know that's probably not written into this variance. It was just something we talked about right before I came up here this evening. So, I mean, we understand the city's viewpoint on the sidewalks. We don't want you to think that we're totally objecting sidewalks in general. That's not what we're here for, but there are a couple of underlying effects with the easement and the trees and the other vertical obstructions. Thank you.
So just to clarify, you're willing to build a 3-foot sidewalk, is that correct? Okay, thank you. Okay, any comments from the audience? Comments from the board? George?
I have a question. We have no information where the trees are, where the setbacks are, where the house is going to be sitting at. So you're talking about 20 feet from the road. You can't build anything. That's right. So we're blind.
Can you get to the microphone, please? We have a vast television audience, and if they can't hear us, then it's a
The
problem.
survey that was provided dated 10/16/2017 is called a tree and elevation survey. Every tree is actually labeled and marked, as well as utility poles, water meters, transformers, if this is the actual survey that was provided in your packet. There's even a legend on the left-hand side that legends all the types of trees on the property.
These lots are 140 feet in depth. That's plenty of room, I would think.
It's a lot, and actually, the reason we did the tree survey on these properties is because we want to do as less impact to any of the trees that absolutely need to be kept on the property. So we're actually going to be shifting lot 41. That house is actually going to be back off the front of the road further than normal, which still is fine with far as the setback requirements, because we don't want to impact the 34-inch oak tree.
Okay. Questions from the board? Yeah. Are we ready for a motion?
You want to entertain public comment again, just in case?
Any comments from the vast audience out there? Sure. Yes, Artemis.
I like to see a sidewalk go in. I think if they're willing to put in any type of sidewalk, I think it would improve the neighborhood and be a nice gesture.
Okay, thank you. Ready for a motion?
I just wanted to make
make a
sure.
motion.
Just a real quick point of clarification. There is a sidewalk on the other side of the street?
Correct.
One more question. The city, is it planning to put in sidewalks in the rest of the area?
I had a conversation with the Public Works Director. This is a higher priority area for sidewalks. I do not have a scheduled installation for this sidewalk.
But it's been spoken about, correct?
Yes.
And would the city object to a 3-foot?
That I would have to defer to Public Works on, or that.
Just so that you guys are also aware.
Are we ready to reopen the public hearing to hear from Mr.
Fine,
Hart?
that's fine. We can delay.
Okay, all right. Please make it quick.
Make it quick. There's a section of the 500 block that doesn't have sidewalk, and a section, and all of the 600 block, but the 400 block all the way to Ring Street has sidewalks on both sides of the street, and also on the other side of Distant. So it's a 2-block section that's lacking sidewalk.
Thank you.
And because you've opened it, I would suggest for due process, we give the applicant one more opportunity to speak if he chooses.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
It's the law.
No, thank you. The only thing that we would say again, if the city is actually planning on putting a sidewalk in front of these 2 houses down the road, I mean, our first request for the variance would certainly be a stronger request. I would say that. They would then determine the impact on the trees, the impact on the power poles, the other transformers and things like that. So I would go back to my first request for the variance and say, if the city can deal with this after the fact, that would be perfectly fine with us. We know that that's going to be the impact and something that they're looking forward to doing in the future. However, if it needed to be done today, if you guys denied the request, we understand that we would be willing, but we're only asking for an exception in the 4-foot width. And again, I can tell you right now, this issue comes up with us a lot. We are also concerned that 4-foot wide sidewalks are for a reason, because they're a safe sidewalk for pedestrian and bicycles if you have bicycles on them. My biggest fear is the utility pole and the transformer that's actually impeding this area could become a safety hazard, and I don't want to do that either. So we have a couple other concerns that we're trying to look at.
Could I ask a question of staff or legal department? Are we authorized to grant a variance to allow a 3-foot sidewalk? Could that be the motion? Yes? Could there be a motion to give to a variance to allow a 3-foot sidewalk?
No, that is not the application before you. You technically don't have a variance before you. It's a waiver.
I'm sorry, waiver.
So it's a waiver
Can
from the
we waive-
sidewalk requirement.
So we can waive 1 foot of a 4-foot sidewalk, or
You
no?
can waive the sidewalk requirement, or you don't waive the sidewalk
I brought that
requirement.
We, under code, we can put conditions onto our motion.
Not on the waiver. This is not a typical variance. I know that it's styled as says it's a variance, but it's actually a waiver, and the criteria are different from your regular criteria. This is found underneath a completely different section of code that doesn't allow you to place conditions on your decision.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to make a motion to approve this waiver on the grounds that the city may, in fact, have to deal with the problems that he is outlined.
And let me clarify something too. One of the criteria is that if is not included is the responsible jurisdiction's 5-year capital improvement plan. So if it's in the 5-year capital improvement plan, then that's one of the 4 criteria that, the 2 + 1, that's part of the 1. So I would ask maybe that you ask staff for a clarification if that's in the 5-year plan, because I don't believe that testimony really bore out. And then I believe staff has one more point they'd like to make that might aid in the decision.
I could not determine that this particular block segment was in the 5-year plan, so I couldn't confirm that. If the waiver is denied, the applicant can either construct the sidewalk or pay into the city's sidewalk fund, and that funding is what the city uses to construct those sidewalks in the future.
I had priority on my motion.
Can I
believe there is-
ask another question?
Yeah, there is a motion.
Is there any rush to decide this tonight? Can we consider this next month? Is there any rush on the applicant's part?
The only thing I would say is that once we knew that the lot was approved,
Yeah, but the sidewalk can be done at the end, right? You can start construction. Sidewalks are normally done at the end anyway.
The sidewalk is required prior to a certificate of occupancy.
it has to be part of the site plan actually when we go to the building department for the permitting.
You can have it as part of your permit application, and then we can grant a waiver later on, or no?
That would be up to the building department, I would.
Actually, it would be up
assume.
to the applicant whether or not they want to continue this application to another time. So it's up to you whether you'd like to continue it or not.
No, can he not apply for the building permit? You're ready to start moving dirt soon, right?
Very soon.
Okay, and you could have your building permit application include a sidewalk thereon, and then ask for a waiver later on. I see Heather, you want to make any statements, or are you just standing mute? Okay. All right.
Chairman,
You're taking the
it's-
fifth again, I see.
It's up to the applicant whether or not they want to continue the application. It's their due process rights, not the purview of the
Just
board.
asking if so he can ask for a delay and still pull his permits.
But here's the other thing too, and let me ask this for clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
Will the evidence that's presented here today change at all? The nature of the trees, the nature of the utilities, the nature of whatever, will that change at all between now and next month?
It should not. The only thing I would say, and I don't know to answer this, is if it would hold up anything with the building permit process.
So then it's up to you whether or not you would like to continue the application.
I would rather go ahead and get this taken care of tonight, and then we can move forward, and you guys won't have to worry about seeing me in another month.
Hey, Mr. Burris?
What will the fee be if he wants to pay whatever fine is there and not construct the sidewalk?
That's irrelevant to this application.
I'll ask a question, I think.
It was stated by the city.
And for the record, as this board's attorney, need to make a record to say that that is irrelevant to this application.
Is there a ready answer? Do you have the answer, Pat, or not?
I don't know how much the fee would be.
Okay, we
The
don't know.
maximum length of sidewalk to be paid for would be 84 feet.
All right, thank
But
And have you been
that
to the
would have to be
property
calculated.
I'm asking the staff.
For the
Have you been to the property and seen what he's talking about with the utility pole and whatnot?
Yes, and that's included in the staff report. There's a similar pole up the street, so I am not an expert on sidewalk construction, but I did not see anything that would impede the construction of a sidewalk.
Okay, so you're saying the city, even if the city were to do it, it could be built around safely?
The one on the corner of Leviston East Cypress Street has, and the applicant is correct, there's a large transmission line that goes down East Cypress and then turns down Levis after that block. One of those poles is on that, along that corner where the sidewalk is already built.
Thank you. George, did you?
Okay. Should I continue with my motion that
Well,
I started?
wasn't there already a motion?
No, I started it
Mr.
and we
Burris
backed
was
off.
making a motion
Okay.
apparently before I did.
All right, I
so
apologize to
defer.
everybody. All right, Mr. Burris, please make.
Yeah, I move to deny the waiver of the requirement for sidewalk construction. Let's take that.
Is there a second? Hearing none, motion dies for lack of a second. Is there another motion?
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Everybody's quiet all of a sudden. Okay. All right, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Turner,
Approve.
Mr. Eisner,
Approve.
Mr. Burris,
No,
Mr. Obowski,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott.
Yes, but I hope they can build a 3-foot sidewalk. Okay, next and last item, thank you for your patience, is application 1811, variance to reduce the required side yard setback, 1626 Seabreeze Drive. And I have a question, Pat, on procedure. The application says side yard, and then at the end of your report, there's a reference to a rear yard, front yard rather. If you go to the last page,
That's correct, and that is a typo.
okay, so
I
it's just a.
apologize,
That's
and
all
I
right, that's
was
fine.
ready to correct that.
You do a great job on these reports, and it's hard to get them all letter perfect.
Okay.
So it's just a side
That-
yard, not a rear or front.
Yeah, that will be correctly reflected in the minutes and
Okay.
whatever decision the board makes.
Okay. I have another procedural question. The name of the applicant came across my desk, and I recalled that name from many years ago, and I couldn't figure out what. And then I saw their place of prior residence, which is my ex-in-laws, Allison Park, Pennsylvania. But could I ask the applicants, did they buy some property off of Sunset Beach from Miss Wiedemann maybe 25 years ago? I was the attorney. Is that going to be a conflict if I handle the closing when they bought a property 25 years ago? I've not seen them since.
Will the outcome of will the outcome of this variance benefit you in any type of a way?
No, or it
No.
won't hurt me either. Okay, so all
He
right.
was just showing off his memory, that's
Yeah,
all.
that's kind of what I figured.
It's going fast, but I just, all right. So let's begin with the staff report, please.
Okay, this is a request to authorize a variance to reduce the required side yard setback in order to construct an addition with enclosed staircase to an existing single-family residence. Located 1626 Seabreeze Drive, zoning R100, land use residential low. Basically, the current residence was built, the existing residence was built in 1959. It's below the required flood elevation. The applicant is proposing to add a vertical addition within the footprint of the existing home. But to access it, there is a staircase would be needed, and the applicant is proposing that be placed in the required side yard setback. If you look at page 2 of the staff report, there is a table kind of showing the relationships of the setbacks. The R100 district requires a minimum of 10 feet for a single yard and a minimum of 25 feet for combined yards. The existing home has a western setback of 8.1 feet from the west property line, and the east setback is 17.9 feet. The western setback would not change with this proposal. The eastern setback would be reduced to 13.4 feet. So it would still be over the minimum 10, but the total would be reduced down to 21.5. The review criteria for variances are listed along with the analysis. If there are any questions on that, the notices were properly sent, and this was properly noticed, and there were no responses received for this application. Summary of findings of fact. I've covered the description of the proposal. Item number 3 on page 4, the limited width of the applicant's lot, and I did neglect to mention this lot is non-conforming with respect to width. It's 70 feet wide. The district minimum is 75. The limited width of the applicant's lot presents a physical difficulty with respect to shape that does not generally apply to other lots within the R100 zoning district. In addition, the requirement to elevate the addition to the home to comply with floodplain requirements limits the applicant's options with respect to providing access to the addition. Number 4, the condition has not been self-created by the applicant. It's a result of the physical condition of the property itself. Number 5, literal enforcement of the side yard setback would prevent the applicant from providing a reasonable access to this vertical addition to meet floodplain requirements and would therefore deny the applicant reasonable use of the property. Number 6, granting the variance would not confer any special privileges on the applicant, either with respect to the use or the layout. The analysis does go through some of the characteristics of the area. There are different shapes and sizes of lots here, and there are several homes that appear to be very close to the property lines. These are several older homes, And we do have differences in the elevations of the homes because of redevelopment and older development. Number 7, granting of the variance would not injure or impact the rights of owners of affected properties or create a nuisance or otherwise substantially negatively impact surrounding properties. Since the purpose of side yards is substantially upheld, and the minimum 10-foot side where the applicant is proposing the addition would still be well over the minimum 10 feet, and that is the neighbor that would be most impacted. Staff recommends approval of a variance for relief from the minimum side yard setback in this case.
Okay, applicant, wish to make a statement? And thank you for your patience.
Hello, I'm Neil Stamper, and I'm representing 1626 Seabreeze. I don't have any more information to add to the staff's report.
Okay, thank you. Great. Questions from the board, either the applicant or the staff? All right, I have one. I noticed the air conditioner is on the east side of the property.
Yes, sir.
Is that going to be moved at all?
No, sir.
It's just a stairway is going to go around it?
It'll start from it and run up towards the back of the house. It won't be much more than maybe 6 or 8 inches wider than the air conditioning unit that's already there.
Is there going to be an echo effect of the staircase from the compressor, the air conditioner, do you think?
No, sir.
The noise factor to the adjacent property owner?
No, actually, I reside across the street. I'm also a general contractor. She's got bushes on the other side. I don't see that as a problem.
Any comments from the audience? Board? Are we ready for a motion?
Motion to approve?
Oh, my usual question, I'm sorry. Any comments from the adjacent property owners? Maybe I missed it. Anybody object?
No comments
Right.
at all.
Okay. Your motion to approve?
Second.
Second for Mr. Burris. Discussion on the motion? Okay, roll call, please, Kim.
Ms. Turner?
Approve.
Mr. Eisner?
Approve.
Mr. Burris?
Approve.
Mr. Obowski?
Yes.
Chairman Elliott?
Yes. Okay, you have 2 years to start your permit, start your construction, rather.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, approval of minutes. Minutes for our January meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I don't recall seeing them. You did, they're in the packet?
I have 2. You want one?
Okay, any comments on the motion?
Is there a second?
Yeah. There's motion to approve minutes?
I'll second.
There was a motion.
I
So we
will
need a
second.
All right, motion by Mr. Burris, second by Mr. Eisner. Roll call, please.
Ms. Turner?
Approve.
Mr. Eisner?
Approve.
Mr. Burris?
Yes.
Mr. Obowski?
Yes.
Mr. Elliott?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Staff comments?
Just a reminder that next month's meeting will be held on Monday, March 26th at 7 p.m.
Wait a minute. What was the date?
Monday, March 26th, I believe.
Correct.
I have that down,
Okay,
yes.
board comments? I have one about the dock issue that came up tonight. We had a dock issue come up a couple of years ago, and it was postponed. Can I bring that up and see what the status of it is? Or is that still continuing? Do you know? You probably wouldn't know. It was before your time.
Are you talking about the one that we were across the street when we had all the hearings on?
Yes.
Yeah, Riverside
If that's
Drive.
likely to come before the board, then I would suggest we don't talk about it. But you can certainly ask if it's still pending or not. But
That's
I would
all I want to
assume-
know. Is it pending? Or we probably wouldn't know. That's right.
Yeah, I
I
would
don't
say
know.
you can probably inquire of
That's
planning
right,
and
it's not-
zoning at some other time.
All right, we're ready for a motion to adjourn?
It was withdrawn. They withdrew that application so that they could come back with something else, and we have not heard back.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, it's now 5 minutes till 9. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Oh, wait a second. Doctor, did you want to make a comment? Okay, thank you. Interesting
Oh,
meeting.
please. Mm-mm. You are fine. You're allowed to be tired. I'm not the only one that's allowed to be tired. Ugh.